Maybe someone's picking off costumed heroes.
You don't think that's a little paranoid?
That what they say about me now?
Over the years, some comic book-based movies had the perfect storm of a director and a writer bringing life to the work of the author and his artist. In some cases, it took a director a certain sensibility to flush out the essence of the book and the character inside it and bring it to life on the silver screen. But can a director, whose work has been nothing but deconstruction of heroes, create a compelling superhero story? And is the movie any good? Let's find out. I'm Meffistoe. Like, share, and subscribe because this is my review of the movie Watchmen.
Whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
Watchmen is the movie adaptation of Alan Moore's limited-run series of the same name that later on became a single-volume graphic novel. It is Alan Moore's most famous work. The movie was directed by Zack Snyder and written by David Hayter and Alex Tse. The movie, much like the story told in it, came out in 2009, has a long and rather strange history. The rights were bought by 20th Century Fox back in the mid-80s while the book is being published, and then passed quite a few hands because no studio can get the project off the ground. Terry Gilliam, who was heading one of those projects back in 1991, even dubbed the movie unfilmable.
I never said the Superman exists and he is American. What I said was, God exists and he's American.
The project became notorious and infamous around Hollywood and did not get made. It was Warner Brothers on their second go-around that connected Zack Snyder to the director's chair after his success on the movie 300 and his ability to adapt a graphical novel into film.
You watched me. You could have turned the gun into steam, the bullets into mercury, the bottle into goddamn snowflakes, but you didn't, did you?
Watchmen tells the story about an alternate timeline where a group of vigilantes helped the US during the Vietnam War, but soon after that war was won, they were shunned by society and had to retire. The movie starts as one of them, the comedian, gets murdered in his own apartment, causing his colleague, Rorschach, to start investigating.
Tonight, a comedian died in New York. Somebody knows why.
This course of action ruffles some feathers and causes Rorschach himself to be locked up in jail. Parallel to that, Dr. Manhattan, a superpowered human, is getting accused for causing cancer to people, and in the fit of rage, he decides to leave Earth and live on Mars. And all the while this is happening, the doomsday clock, the clock that tells us how close are we to nuclear annihilation, is ticking ever so closely to midnight, and the government is powerless on stopping it.
Mr. President, the Soviets have moved their tanks just short of the Afghan border.
I know that description does not do the movie any justice, but stay with me, folks. If you've seen the movie already, obviously I missed out on a lot of plot points. But for the sake of keeping everything vague and spoiler-free, I will say this. The movie's timeline is explained right at the start of the movie as the credits roll. The current year in which all this is taking place is the mid-80s. For many different various reasons, Nixon is still the president on his fourth term, heading into his fifth. It makes sense, don't worry. And the thing that is always in the background is that threat of a nuclear war. To this story, our main characters are these vigilantes, these crime fighters, who are not strictly doing their job of truth, justice in the American way. Some do it for fun, some do it for absolute justice, and some just do it for money and power.
You know, for a guy who calls himself the comedian, I can never tell when you're joking.
Watchmen.
Now, the reason I don't get to the plot because it is very elaborate and unravels itself in pieces. Because every so often in the movie, we get flashbacks whenever there's a need for an exposition dump, and we get a little bit of that information peeled back. The point is that each character, each hero, has its own motives to get to this mystery, which is who killed the comedian, and more importantly, why. Through this process, there are a lot of questions on the validity of having these heroes even exist. And of course, each and every one of them is struggling with this question. Dr. Manhattan feels he's lost his human side, the Night Owl on the importance of heroes, Rorschach on the value of justice, and Ozymandias on the need of having order.
Attack on one is attack on all of us.
What do you suggest we do about it?
Retribution.
The movie is very dark in its tone, shot mostly at nighttime settings or in a closed room where you don't see the sunlight, or sometimes far away from Earth on Mars' surface. Like I said, it will all make sense by the time you get there. The movie is violent and brutal, which is a staple of many of Zack Snyder's films. To be fair, looking back at this movie after many years, I can safely say that this is my favorite Snyder movie. As much as I don't like most of his projects, I'm looking at you, Rebel Moon, this one is not only my favorite, it is probably his best. Snyder loves faulty heroes. He loves to pick them apart and see what makes them tick. Kind of like opening the back of a watch or a clock and seeing how things work together. It is that parallel between the watch and the Watchmen which is apparent. In the novel, it is much more pronounced, but the movie skips those parts and manages to tie in the clock imagery in various different scenes instead.
The truth is, you're the closest thing to a friend I got. What the fuck does that say?
Part of the reason why this movie was so notorious in its production is the final act, especially those last scenes. Without spoiling it, I'll say that it required a big giant squid monster destroying New York, and it's not there for a reason. Now, in 2009, the CGI could get that decent effect in, but it wasn't a technical issue. It was a story one. It required a different ending to what we got, and the writers throughout the years could not make sense of it all until Alex Tse and Zack Snyder took over. Well, actually adapted the book in a way where they didn't need to use that big squid.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
As for my recommendation, this is not a superhero movie. This is a neo-noir detective mystery movie with superhero-like people playing the main roles. Sadly, one of its faults is the fact that it is very long. The theatrical cut, which is hard to get, is 2 hours and 43 minutes. And the director's cut adds about 10 minutes on top of that. Plus, the most readily available cut that you can get is the ultimate cut, which is 3 hours and 35 minutes. And if I do say so myself, after watching all 3 versions, the theatrical cut is good enough. But let's just say that Snyder took every bit of that budget they gave him and he ran with it, like he always does. Having said that, the movie is solid, dark, greedy, and brutal. It has the performance of a lifetime by Jackie Earle Haley, who plays Rorschach, and an ending that will leave you thinking about morality, injustice, truth, or lies. To me, leaving the theater or finishing a movie and continuing on to think about it is a sign of a good experience. So I will recommend you pick up this movie to watch and try to enjoy even the philosophical questions. I thank you for watching, and remember, hope is a good thing, maybe even the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I'll see you on the next video.